Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the Buffalo Wings. We are at about the midway point of the 2035 season, 56 and 24 for Buffalo through our first 80 games of the season. We've got the number one offense in the National League in terms of runs scored. The number two pitching staff in the National League in terms of runs allowed. Looks like we're third overall in baseball in terms of our team ERA. So an excellent season so far, up 11 games on the Marlins in the NL East, and we are up 8 games on the Brewers and the A's for the best record in baseball. So over the next month, we've just got to figure out if there's any talent that we want to try to add to improve this already excellent team. We did a review in our last episode. In my mind, there's no obvious huge holes to fill. Always interested in getting better, but we're pretty happy with the 5 pitchers in our rotation. Feel that Andrew Painter and or Jarlin Susana could fill in the rotation if we need some help. We have just moved Juan Veliz to become our closer instead of Bryce Miller. We'll see how Veliz does in that role for the time being. Still could make a potential move there down the stretch. But otherwise, we're very happy with Lauren Walborn as a stopper. Happy with Painter and Yinger and Vallejo, Wenzel the lefty, and Jarlin Susana. And Bryce Miller, although we just demoted him, still is second in the National League with 23 saves, but he has not been pristine in terms of his performance this year. So always feel like we could add a high-quality arm. Never going to turn down that opportunity if there's somebody out there. Don't know that there will be a real difference maker, particularly in the starting rotation. Certainly feel like we might be able to find an arm or two to help the bullpen as we get closer to the trade deadline. Kind of like our catcher situation with Walt Miller and Andres Medina in a platoon. Infield of Heiner, Seifu, Anderson, and then some type of platoon of Hull, Edwards, and Meyer for the rest of the slots is pretty solid. Center field, we've had James Wood playing against right-handers for much of the season, and he is not great defensively, and he's only hitting .212 on the season with 8 homers and 146 at-bats. Feel like that is a position that we could potentially upgrade, but we've got a decent upgrade right in AAA with Tyreek Hardage. Very good defensive center fielder who's just down there learning how to play first base for the heck of it since we demoted him. Hasn't hit great this year, .241 at the major league level, but he's been raking with a .347 average and 8 homers in less than 100 at-bats in AAA. So he's clearly ready for the majors. He would clearly play a better center field defensively than Wood has. If either Tim Gaglia, another young player who's up in center field right now, or Tyreek Hardage were a left-handed hitter, probably wouldn't have even gone after James Wood this year. But feel like potentially upgrading in center field if there was an incredible rental available, big left-handed bat who's great defensively. That's something we could do to help us out for the last 3 months of the season. Don't know that there's going to be a player like that available. If there's a great infielder who could upgrade our infield, or a great catcher for that matter who could upgrade us at that position, we'd certainly look into it. But I don't feel like we have to be desperate in any moves that we make over the next 4+ weeks until we get to the trade deadline. And we've continued to roll here in the early stages of July. Record stands at 63 and 25 now. All-star teams were announced yesterday, so let's take a look at Well, we'll take a look first at whether we have any starters other than Jenneret. Not really expecting anyone. Walt Miller, the young catcher, finished second in the voting. Mike Heiner finished third in the voting at first base. Deshaun Seifu did win, so that's nice to see. A third All-Star appearance finally for Seifu. It's been 6 years since the last time the brilliant infielder was named an All-Star. Finished second in the National League MVP voting last year. So good to see some recognition for him. A bit of a surprise, Joe Edwards at third base, despite hitting just .242, does have 17 homers. He's on a defending World Series championship team. So the young utility infielder named the starting All-Star at third base. So looks like the fans in Buffalo have been voting early and often this year for All-Stars. And not surprisingly, to see Shamar Jenneret as the designated hitter. He's having a monster year for us at this point, batting .328 with 28 homers and 92 ribbies, at the top of the league or near the top of the league in all of those categories, as he chases a potential Triple Crown, and has the potential to also become one of those rare players who's won a MVP award in each league. I think he'd be joining Frank Robinson with that recognition. Lorne Walborn, our excellent stopper, number one in votes among relievers. So looking at the actual rosters and who made the team here. Alexis Barajas, 10-3 with a 2.64 ERA. Our ace is a member of the pitching staff. Other than him, it's just Lorne Walborn. So the second best pitching staff in the National League has two pitchers on the team. They're calling Lorne Walborn a closer, even though we've been using him as a stopper all season, and he's had another excellent year for us there. Miller, the young catcher, named an All-Star, hitting .250 with 7 homers. Joe Edwards, a starter, as we talked about. Deshaun Seifu voted in as a starter, as we talked about. Bobby Bolig, hitting .289 with 13 homers and 19 steals, named to the team. Shamar Jenneret, as well as the starting DH, as we talked about, although he's listed as a left fielder. So Jenneret, Bolig, Seifu, Edwards, Miller, Walborn, and Barajas are the 7 All-Stars for the Buffalo Wings this year. So after a 112-win World Championship season last year, the Buffalo Wings are popular with the fans, popular with the voters, popular with the other players, and 7 of them named to the National League All-Star team here in 2035. And we're a little over a week away from the trade deadline at this point. The Wings continue to play incredible baseball, 71-28 record, 8-2 in our last 10, up 16 on the Marlins in the National League East at this point. The A's are 62-37, so they are 9 games behind us in the battle for the best record in baseball. Jenneret still looks potentially in the mix for a Triple Crown, tying for the league lead in batter WAR, leading in OPS, running away with the lead in ribbies, one up in home runs, and within 4 points of the batting average. However, he just suffered a hand contusion. He's going to be out for a week. That is not optimal. Not going to have a big impact on the batting average, and he's got a huge lead in ribbies, but a tough battle for home runs here. So certainly the fact that he could miss a week, and he'll need to miss 10 games if we put him on the IL, which we probably will, just to be cautious, could end up costing him an opportunity to chase a Triple Crown this year. And we've actually decided we've got enough depth to keep Jenneret up. Just played 1 game, and it says that he's only going to be out for 5 games now. So rather than potentially have him miss a few extra games by putting him on the 10-day IL, this will be an opportunity for some of our depth to get some extra playing time while Jenneret is banged up, and also at least in theory maximize his chances to chase a triple crown by minimizing the number of games that he ends up missing. And we've been perusing the trade market, and we've almost got a deal done with Colorado. We are going to get the 30-year-old closer, Chris Staten, one of the top closers in the game. Veliz has been doing a fine job for us since we moved Bryce Miller out of that role. But we are a win now team, and the 30-year-old Staten is on the trade market. Colorado signed him this offseason. Looks like to a 1 year, or actually they picked him up in a trade this offseason heading into the final year of his contract with Boston. 132 ERA plus, 68 FIP minus over the course of his career. We have to give up a couple of veteran pieces, but we're getting them to keep most of his salary, which will give us the flexibility to potentially pick to sign the excellent young, impossible to sign player we picked in the 5th round of the draft. Have to give two potentially useful pieces. The first is the minor league reliever Vince Edmonds, who we picked in the 7th round back in 2032. 21-year-old, still in rookie ball for us, has not distinguished himself there. Worry about his control. He's walked about a batter an inning over the course of his career and doesn't seem to be making much improvement there. More significantly, though, we're going to include the minor league two-way player Jonathan Cruikshanks. You may remember we picked him in the 2nd round of that same draft in 2032. He doesn't really pitch anymore because he's not that good at it. Hitting 252 this year with 4 homers and 119 ribbies, but he's a 20-year-old who's still in rookie ball. Looking at his profile, I think he could be a useful-ish bat in the outfield, but he's not particularly great defensively. Doesn't have tons of speed. The bat could be useful, but is not exceptional. And I think that the addition of Staten right now will clearly stabilize our closer position, make there be no questions about who our closer is, although I'm sure Veliz will be disappointed in the move. And it also cements the excellent left-handed reliever, our all-star Walborn, as a stopper for us, so no temptation to put him into the closer role with this trade. I would have liked to just include Bryce Miller in this trade to get him off the team. Unfortunately, he's got 5 and 10 or 10 and 5 rights, depending on how you look at it, and he is not willing to waive his no trade rights at this point. Probably wants to try to win another ring for us, and he thinks he might be getting back into that closer role, which he probably isn't. But we are going to go ahead and add in the last player that we need, Andres Pimentel, to get this trade completed. And we have added a big-time pitcher to the back of our bullpen. The fans are excited. The clubhouse happy with his leadership. Because we couldn't include Miller, we're now too heavy in our rotation in our bullpen. And unfortunately, it's going to mean a tough decision. As I mentioned, we would have loved to include Miller if he was willing to waive the no-trade clause. But Yohane Varejo, the right-hander that we really like, has been up for the past few seasons. Does still have 2 option years left. And Varejo is going to get stashed in AAA. I think when we get to the postseason, there's a very good chance that Varejo will be on the postseason roster. I think right now I'd include him on the roster over Bryce Miller. But unfortunately right now, Varejo is going down to AAA Albany to make way for Chris Staten, who is going to get pushed right into the closer role for us. So Juan Veliz is going to go back to a setup role. I guess we will allow Bryce Miller, our former closer, to stay in a setup role, and Staten is going to become our closer now. Part of the reason I wanted to make this move was that as good as Valise is, given that Walborn, one of our lefties, is already in that stopper role, I do like having two lefties in Valise and Wenzel that we can potentially use for matchups against left-handed pitchers, left-handed hitters. And if Valise was kind of forced into that closer role and Walborn was forced in the stopper role, then really the only lefty we have left for specific matchups until the very late innings of the game is Wenzel. And I'd prefer a little more flexibility. So we're still a week away from the trade deadline. I don't think we're going to do a ton, but certainly adding one of the top relievers in the game should strengthen the back end of our bullpen. And we've received a very intriguing trade offer from the Pirates. They've offered us the center fielder Max Clark, who is an excellent center fielder, for Deshaun Seifu. Now, we are not going to trade Seifu. Clark is an excellent player, a former MVP, won a Gold Glove Award, perennial All-Star, a couple of Silver Sluggers, pretty good defensively with an excellent bat, but he's wrecked physically, and he's making $36 million a year for this year and the next 3 seasons after this. So bringing this left-handed bat on board would be an upgrade from Wood, both offensively and defensively, but it would also necessitate us making a long and expensive commitment for a player that we really can't afford for these out years. So I don't think we're going to get anything done. If we were going to do this deal, we would need the Pirates to maintain a huge chunk of his contract and also be willing to not take one of our franchise cornerstones in Seifu. I don't love the fact that Clark is wrecked physically, but beggars can't be choosers when it comes to the trade deadline. And if there is something reasonable to be done, we're going to investigate it. Given that we would need Pittsburgh to retain so much of his contract, I just don't think there's going to be anything to really do here, but we're at least going to look into it. And unfortunately, there was just nothing realistic to do with Max Clark, even getting them to keep 50% of his salary, which meant we'd still be on the hook for the next 3 seasons after this one at $18 million a year for a admittedly excellent but still wrecked physically player in his 30s. And even just getting them to keep 50% of the salary, we had to add in excellent young players like Juan Estrada, the two-way player, was the only one who could get the deal done, in addition to Eric Barbarito, former first-round pick, one of the better pitching prospects in our system, and then that was including Wood to open up a roster spot for Clark. Just felt like the price was too high to pay in terms of what we're giving up this year, and more importantly, in terms of taking on that potentially very difficult contract going forward. There is one guy who was recently added to the trade block that I was marginally interested in, and that is the center fielder Dylan Carlson, who would certainly be an upgrade from Wood. Unfortunately, he says he's unwilling to waive his no-trade clause at this point. We've been going back and forth with the Rangers on him over the last week or two. Their price has been really high, which is why we haven't gotten anything done. I don't know if maybe over the next couple days he'll get back to a point where he is willing to waive the no-trade clause again. But right now it doesn't seem like there's anything doing with Mr. Carlson either. And we're now a day before the trade deadline, 74-31, 18 games up on the Marlins. Jenneret, 2/3 of the way to the Triple Crown. He's now winning the batting title by 11 points over his teammate Seifu. 17 ribby lead, but missing those games last week. He has slipped behind Jorge Aragui in the home run race, but certainly going to be interesting. With the way our team is playing, there's no obvious holes to fill, as we've talked about. Would love to upgrade at center field. A guy like Max Clark clearly could do that for us. But I think the price that the Pittsburgh Pirates are looking for him is just prohibitive, given that we need them to retain a ton of his contract. And the Pirates, being the Pirates, are not willing to get back to the trade that we were at. You know, if we add in Wood and Barberito, we can get the deal done if we're willing to retain or take on $36 million a year for the next 3.5 seasons. And as I mentioned, getting it to 50%. Estrada doesn't even get it done anymore. With 40% retention, Edwards, Estrada, Flores, or Shazier has to get put in the deal. So with the exception of Flores, all of those would weaken our team for this year at an important spot. And then we'd still be on the hook for about $21.5 million a year for Clark for those next 3 years, which to me, for a wrecked guy who's going to be 31, 32, and 33 in those seasons, just scares me. I'd love to add him because he'd make us better for this year, but I think the price is just a bit too high. There are now, interestingly, 2 other center fielders on the trade block. We've already talked about Carlson. He's still not willing to waive his no-trade clause from the Rangers. And Jason Dominguez not willing to waive his no-trade clause from Colorado. So I would think in a perfect world that the opportunity to get out of a Colorado team that is on the, I guess they're well in the wild card race, but they're 5 games back in their division, or a Texas team that's definitely right in the middle of fighting for the 3rd and 4th wild cards in the American League. You would think that the opportunity to potentially go to a team that's likely to have home field advantage throughout the postseason as they try to win a second consecutive championship might be attractive, but apparently it is not attractive enough for either of the gentlemen who play center field and could perhaps give us a small upgrade compared to what we have there today. And we made it to trade deadline day. Dylan Carlson, who's in the final year of his contract, still not willing to waive his no-trade clause. Looks like Jason Dominguez is now. The issue is that he's also going to be paid about $24 million next year at the age of 33. He's wrecked physically. Excellent defensive center fielder with a useful bat. I think all things being equal, he would be an upgrade from James Wood. But we're not going to give our starting shortstop, one of our 2 ace pitchers, all-star third baseman, or our big young center fielder to bring Dominguez on board and bring that contract over. If we put James Wood into the deal, doesn't really do too much to make it more palatable. They're willing then to also take Joe Gallagher, who's one of the top prospects in baseball, another guy who's similar to what we got last year from Flores, is just exploding through our organization. Hit 37 homers and 283 at-bats in A-ball. His a ridiculous 18 home runs in 92 at-bats in high A-ball. We're going to promote him to Double-A very shortly, if not today. So 55 homers this year across 2 levels, has an opportunity to top the 61 that Flores hit across 4 minor league levels last year. Clearly not going to put him in for a rental. We'll play around with this trade a little bit Dominguez, as I said, is a big upgrade in center field to Wood. Doesn't have quite the same pop in his bat. Wood has the average up to 234, does have 11 homers and 218 at-bats. So I don't feel like we have to do anything, particularly if we're bringing on a wrecked player who's older than Wood, which I guess Dominguez is not older than Wood. He's a couple months younger than him, but he's wrecked basically the same age. A little better defensively, arguably not quite as good with the bat, but if we could get this trade done and not have to pay a ton, we would do it. But I don't want to be taking on almost $24 million for Jason Dominguez next year. So I have a feeling we're unlikely to do much else as the final hours of the trade window in 2035 tick away. And we've made it past the trade deadline. We explored a lot of center fielders and some other positions, just did not find anything reasonable. So relatively quiet trade deadline for us. The addition of Chris Staten, the only move that we made. Staten's pitched 2 games for us, has 2 saves, gone 3 1/3 innings, hasn't allowed a hit, has walked 2 and struck out 5. So a pretty solid start to his career in Buffalo. May just be a 1-year career in Buffalo, or actually more accurately about hopefully 3+ months, including the playoffs in Buffalo. But think that he will hopefully stabilize our bullpen further and ensure that this team is as competitive as it can possibly be when we do get to the postseason. Here on August 1st, we're 19.5 up on the Marlins at 65 and 42. The A's are still the second best team in baseball, but we are 11 games up on the A's for the best record in baseball. Generette now 3 back in the home run race in terms of a potential triple crown, still leading the league by 8 points in batting over his teammate Seifu, and has a 15 RBI lead at this point. So it's certainly conceivable that Generette's going to make a run at a Triple Crown and or an MVP award this year. Seifu having another excellent season, probably will be getting some MVP votes as well. Taking a look at the league leaders in the pitching, Alexis Barajas, our ace, is tied for second in the league in wins with 11 and third in ERA with a 2.66 ERA, and he ranks number 2 in pitcher WAR behind Jeff Dover, who has a 10-8 record, but 3.14 ERA with 197 strikeouts, which ranks second in the league. Taking a look at team statistics, we bounced back from that putrid sub-600 winning percentage in June with a 740 winning percentage in July. To put this season into perspective, that 740 winning percentage is still our second worst month of the season, worse than we did in either April or May. Still number 1 in the National League in runs scored and in the top 3 in every offensive category except for strikeouts, where we're 7th, and base running, where we rank 5th. Runs allowed still ranks 2nd in the National League at this point. Our bullpen has a sub-3 ERA on the top handful in most pitching categories, and we are a bit above average in terms of our defensive metrics. 76 and 31 record, 2 above Pythagorean expectations. Our 23 and 9 record in one-run games, 718 winning percentage sounds like incredible luck, but honestly, it's only 8 percentage points better than our overall record. So you could say that we're getting lucky, but if we had one more loss in one-run games, we'd basically be playing the same in one-run games as we are playing in every game. Still crushing left-handed pitching and pretty dominant against right-handed pitching, winning almost 2/3 of our games against righties. And with the fact that we haven't done much at the trade deadline, we've got about $12.6 million available. And this does give us the opportunity to go after Alexis Mazuka, who we felt was one of the top prospects in this past draft, at least at the point we were drafting 34th overall in the first round. Given his impossible signing demands, we felt that we could wait on him, and he ended up dropping to the 5th round. Like the outfield range, like the speed, although he's not a particularly efficient base runner. I think that his contact and his gap power could both be excellent with average home run power, and with that 65 range in the outfield, particularly if we're able to get a little bit of improvement out there as well, and the fact that he's durable, think that he is an interesting player. So we are going to at least have a discussion here with Mazuka. He needs a bonus significantly above 10 million to consider signing. Patience running very low, probably our last shot at signing him, given that we've got 12.9 million in budget room. We're not going to go crazy, but we are going to try to hopefully guarantee that we get him signed. We're going to offer him 10.6 million. Try to get him in to play the last couple weeks of our rookie ball season potentially and get a little bit of practice at the professional level, and feel like we've got the opportunity to add a first round talent here by basically just paying him a ton of money, having picked him up in the 5th round. And we've simmed ahead a few days, and Mazuka has joined our organization, so we're going to get his professional career underway here over the last few weeks of August. Haven't been playing as well in the month of August. You can see we've actually got a 2-3 record thus far. Our winning percentage has dipped below 700. So we're still in a excellent position, up 20 games on the Marlins and up 9 on the A's for the best record in baseball, but they have won 3 in a row while we've lost 2 in a row. Jenneret still stuck at 31 homers. He's now behind both Eragi and Padilla, winning the batting title over Seifu, and only 13 ribbies clear of Jimmy Burns. So Jenneret in a bit of a slump as far as hitting homers and driving in runs, although he has got the batting average to be the best in the league recently, still leading the league in OPS as well. Seifu looks poised to lead the National League in steals for an 8th consecutive season. And we'll see whether Seifu can upend his teammates' hopes for a triple crown, or at the very least a batting title, by perhaps trying to win the first batting title of his storied career. Seifu now actually ranks 3rd in the National League in batter war, which is better than Jenneret, given that as our DH, Jenneret not really doing anything at all for us defensively. And with Mazuka on board, we've now got all of our draft picks signed. So it's a good time to call it an episode here, and we'll be back with our push to clinch our playoff berth, hopefully clinch the best record in baseball, hopefully, most hopefully, ensure that this team is healthy for the playoffs in our next episode. And we'll also find out how Jenneret does in his quest for a triple crown, and how Seifu does in his quest to potentially win the first batting title of his career. So a lot going on for our Buffalo Wings here in 2035. Been a great season so far, 78-34 record, 20 games up on the Marlins as we talked about, and importantly right now we are very healthy at the major league level, nobody on the injured list. The hope is that we can maintain that over the last couple months of the season, or more realistically, someone's going to get banged up at some point, at least have no serious injuries by the time we get to the playoffs. And we'll find out how we do with that goal in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day. And before I go away, these guys are not all incredible players. We're looking at ratings relative to the FSL, moving it back to the majors. You see we've still got some big-time players in Barajas, the recently added Staten, and Jenneret most notably. But we don't have a super team, despite our 78-34 record. Until the next episode, have a great day, and thanks for watching.